Hey Chemsters, this is Mrs. Vandelay bringing you another edition of Chemster video for section 7.3. We left off last time where we just converted what I call two-steppers, so from liters to grams or grams to molecules or things like that. But we did not get to the point where we were converting molecules and atoms together. And you would have needed to do this for a couple of the questions on the homework. So I wanted to do this now. So what you're going to need to do to get ready for this session of Chemster video is you're going to need your own piece of paper for these notes, and then you're going to go back to our note packet for the next section. You're going to need a calculator, and you're going to need a periodic table. So why don't you pause this while you get everything out. Alright, so hopefully you have everything you need. You have your paper, you have a periodic table, and a calculator. So let's get started. So the question is, how do we convert from molecules to atoms? This is saying how to determine the number of atoms of an element in a compound. So you have a compound and how many atoms are in each of those. So for example, I just used carbon dioxide, pretty easy one. How many atoms of carbon are there in carbon dioxide? You have only one atom here of carbon. But how many atoms of oxygen do you have in one molecule of oxygen? You have two. So you use the word molecule if you have a compound. Before we would just use atoms if we had just an element. So this is a little bit different because we're asking how many atoms are within one molecule. Now, just be aware that this could become what I call a three-stepper. If the question asks for atoms and you're given a molecule, you're going to need that extra step. So, for example, again, we're going to just factor label here. The question is, how many atoms of oxygen are in 34 liters of carbon dioxide? No, we have a compound in carbon dioxide, but they're asking for atoms. It's going to require that extra step. So we're going to start off exactly how we did before, where we write, question mark atoms. Here we come. How many atoms are in 34 liters? And what do we want to get rid of? Hopefully you figured out the liters. So I put 22.4 liters. What's the only thing liters can go to? Hopefully you wrote down the mole. And moles is not atoms, so I have an extra step, right? So what has to go on the bottom? Moles. And this is, just like before. What did we do if this said how many molecules of oxygen or are in 34 liters of carbon dioxide? So how many molecules? You need to go to that step. If this is a compound, you still need to go to molecules, because what happens next? We're going to say in one molecule of carbon dioxide, that's when we have two atoms of oxygen. So this is our last step for a question like this, where you still had to go to molecules because this is a compound. So then the last step is within one molecule you have two atoms of oxygen. So if you do your math, hopefully you did your math right, and you get 1.8 times 10 to the 23rd atoms of oxygen. Just another step, so you're answering the question. So I made the next one a little bit more difficult. Not too bad, I hope. So how many atoms of oxygen are in 47.9 grams, periodic table, of aluminum sulfate? Notice this is a compound, and you're asking for atoms. So this is going to require the extra step. So let's start off again. How many atoms are in 47.9 grams, periodic table, of aluminum sulfate? Well, go ahead, if you need to, pause this and you figure out the molar mass of aluminum sulfate. Go ahead and pause this. Well, how did you do? I got 342.17 grams of aluminum sulfate, and that's in 1 mole. So now what? Well, obviously, I have to get rid of the mole because I don't really want the mole anymore, right? And again, I'll say this one more time. If you need to make some kind of note to yourself that this is a compound, so this step right here, we have to go to molecules. Because this is a compound, we still go 1 mole to 6.2 times 10 to the 3rd molecules. So then our last step is to get rid of the molecule, hang on, and go to atoms. So how many atoms of oxygen are in 1 molecule? Go over here. I see a parentheses, so we have to distribute. So how many atoms of oxygen are there? Hopefully you got 12. So then you do your math. La 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 la. And what'd you get? I got 1.01 times 10 to the 24th atoms of oxygen. So what I'd like you to do now is go back to your homework packet. And you remember this page? This is mixed mole problems. I think this was page 7. And you need to figure out number 5. You can do that now, but it's only a one-stepper because you are given molecules and now you want atoms. But they're not asking for an atoms of a specific. They want total atoms. So you can do that. How many total atoms are in 1 molecule? And you can do that. And then you can also do number 7, part B. All right, how many atoms of oxygen are there in that many grams of oxygen up ahead in number 6? So you can now convert molecules to atoms of oxygen. So go ahead and finish off page 7. When you do, come back to blank wall and get out your notes.